Hey everybody, Stephen John Moran, and we are live. All right, here live here today. I haven't used this studio here before, so this is something a little bit new to me. Couple cool things, man. This has been a crazy last year, hasn't it? It was about a year ago that Chat GPT came out, and AI has just really changed the landscape. And I want to show you a quick little video here that I just put together that is kind of about what these AI bots are doing. It's pretty cool. So just check it out here real quick.
An AI bot that can get leads for you, then it answers their questions and makes sales for you. It uses AI to learn all about your offer. Then it answers people's questions about your stuff, just like a real person, but more reliable. And once it's answered their questions, it goes into sales mode and sends them a link to buy. If you want to see it in action, just send me a DM with the word payday. When you do, the AI bot will start talking to you, and you can see it for yourself. So send me a DM with the word payday and check it out.
Now that was pretty cool, right? Now that was not, that was not me. That was actually I was just type the words in, and then, the bot now has my voice, and these things will basically go to your website. They'll crawl your website. They can answer all your questions. It really is amazing what can be done with them. So if you DM the word payday, you can actually see this AI sales bot in action. It's really pretty cool what's happened in the last year, and I can only imagine what's going to happen in the next couple of years. But hey, the primary thing that I wanted to do here on today's training is I put together a training for showing how to scale your business to 8 figures and beyond without stress and overwhelm. So if you're a successful business owner and you find yourself stuck or a little overwhelmed with certain things and stuff like that, I think you're really going to like this training. And I'll be sticking around here. I'll be on after the training to answer any other questions and in case anybody might have. So let's go ahead and let's
an AI bot
on with the training here. Hold on a second. All right. That should do it. Everybody, Stephen Moran here, and I hope everybody's doing well. I want to thank you so much for joining me on today's presentation. As you can tell by the title slide here, what we're going to be focusing on today, and the title of this presentation is called Your Next Million. This is all about how to grow your successful business to 8 figures and beyond. And for those of you who don't know me, I'll make this a mercifully brief introduction. My name is Stephen Moran, and that's a picture of me at Mission Hills Country Club in Rancho Mirage, where I recently won the Southern California Open in my flight, and I'm really proud of that. I'm known as the go-to guy in the internet marketing space for creating marketing campaigns that get results fast. My campaigns have generated over $15 million for myself and my private clients in the last 3 years alone. But this presentation is more about you than me, so let's keep moving. I don't know if you're like me, but have you ever noticed that almost everything you see online is about how to get started? Most of it's beginner stuff. How to build a funnel, how to run a Facebook ad, how to create a product, things like that, right? Stuff that, I don't know about you, but have you ever noticed a massive gap in the marketplace for business that's already up and running and they're doing really well, but they just want to do better? The people that are already dedicated to the game they're in, and they're like, hey, we just want to grow, and we made it past the first hurdle. What about us? So if that sounds like you, this is specifically for you. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing here today. I'm going to show you how one thing can literally 10x your business. Actually, if you want to split hairs, we'll talk about how it can potentially 16.66x your business. It's all based on stuff that I've done personally, and it's all based on stuff clients have done. So with that said, let me give you some very important disclosure. I'm going to share mostly client stories along with my own business, and please understand the effectiveness of the concepts I'm sharing with you in today's presentation. I'm not using them as any sort of income claim or insinuating that if you give me money that you're going to get the same results that they did or anything like that at all. It's really just for illustrative purposes. The average person that buys any sort of how-to stuff training, whether it's weight loss, online business growth, or whatever, the average person rarely gets any results at all. Now, I don't know why that is, but the average person who buys home exercise equipment rarely looks like a fitness model, do they? We've all seen that before, right? So I just figured I'd get some straight talk about that. You're probably used to a bunch of hype, and that's not what you're going to get here, all right? So let's get started. Do you remember when you got started? Isn't this a great slide? Remember when you started your business? I can't help but laugh, but I Googled start a business in Google Images, and this is one of the images I found. It looks like we're starting a flying light bulb business. Anyways, remember when you got started, you had this idea, right? And the first thing you did is you went into debt. At least you spent some money, right? You had to have some courses. And most of those courses are really, really good. I've spent so much money on courses, and I'm glad I did. I don't ever really remember purchasing a bad course. Even the ones you think might be bad, you had a couple of real nuggets in there if you really went through them. And then if you're like me, every single idea you had to have its own domain, right? So I don't know about you, but I literally got hundreds of domains for every single harebrained idea I've ever come up with. And then you buy some more courses. Then, of course, the courses you buy open this whole other can of worms. So then you have some more ideas. So then you buy some more domains. And then you got product creation. Then you got to make product. And that can be a pain in the butt. And then you build your website and your sales letter and your order form and you hook everything up. And all the tech stuff is a major hassle. And then you're finally ready to go and you're finally ready to run to market. You're ready to start selling your stuff. So you're all excited and stuff and you run a Facebook ad or something and you end up here at damn it. Because it never works the first time. This image, by the way, is what I found when I Googled disappointment in Google Images. It really kind of is like that, though, isn't it? You're expecting to have a really fun experience, and then it doesn't work right. And it's so disappointing. This is where most people quit. And if you're here, you've probably been at this stage, and you instead separated yourself from the rest of the crowd and separated yourself from the 99.99% of other human beings, and you kept at it. So you got back in there, and you just kept trying. By the way, this is the slide you get when you Google perseverance in Google Images. So you put on a tie and you went in the desert and you pushed a rock up a hill is basically what it's saying. But that is what it feels like though sometimes, doesn't it? Because you're trying to, you got to change your sales page, or maybe your website didn't work, or maybe your price point was wrong, or maybe you set up the ad wrong, or whatever, right? But you keep going and you endure just so much hassle. And then finally, you've made it, right? Now, I don't know what making it means for you, but for me, when I first started online, my version was that I just wanted to make enough money online so I didn't have to have a job. And, so many people out there, their idea of making it is they just want to escape from something that's unpleasant. Usually it's like a job, right? So probably you started your company because you didn't enjoy doing what the thing that was that you were doing, and you wanted freedom. So regardless, you made it, right? And this is where things start to get real funky. So you think that first million or that first milestone was hard? This is where it really gets hard, because your brain is like whispering to you, almost like it's a voice of temptation. And it says, hey man, you are a super genius. And that's exactly how you spell it in this particular context. Your brain says, dude, you did it. You went out there and you had this idea and people laughed at you and no one thought you could do it. And you did it. And now you're smarter than the people you went to high school with. And if you can do that, you can do anything. And your brain starts saying all these ideas and all these business ideas. And maybe you go to a conference or something and you meet somebody and you're both in the same state where your brains are telling you you're these super geniuses and you want to start another project. So now you've got your core project and you start another project and you start another one. And then you have an idea for another product. So you want to create that. Then you got all these different ideas and all these different projects and everything going along. And pretty soon you got all these plates spinning in the air, right? And now maybe you got to hire some staff, or you got a bunch of partners you got to deal with. Now you got all this complexity in your business. And at the end of the day, instead of doing all the cool stuff you did that made you successful, you're putting out all these fires and keeping all these plates going, and you're feeling like this guy. Instead of creating stuff and getting things done, you're sort of having to react to all this other stuff. And the next thing you know is you're here again. You're right back where you started. But the difference is, you can't tell by looking at the slides, but now you've got more money and these are nicer clown clothes. As a matter of fact, these are designer clown clothes. But you're right back at that state of being disappointed. Think about this. Have you ever woke up in the morning and you're like, all right, I'm going to get all this stuff done today. You got your whole day planned and you get up in the morning, you pick up the phone or you check your email or whatever, and it's just the first 15 minutes of the day and something has already gone wrong. Now you spend all your day putting out fires, doing nothing you had planned to do, so you can't grow at all, because you're reacting to all these other things. Well, here's what's going on, all right? This is why that's happening, and we'll talk about how to cure this. I first want to diagnose the problem for you and show you the root cause of it first. So what's happening is, number one, you got too much stuff to do. This could be too many projects. It could be too many moving parts within the business itself. And the result is that you're constantly put in a state of reaction where, like when you wake up, instead of doing the stuff you planned on doing, you're reacting to some sort of an issue. Whether it's some sort of a problem or opportunity or distraction or whatever, you're in a state of reaction. And because of that, you get stressed out. Because of all the stuff you got to do, it piles up and it doesn't get done, so you're stressed out. And as a result of being stressed out, you can't really be creative at all, right? You can't move forward, so you're stuck. The reason for this is you're using what I like to call first million focus. Now, if you remember, the title of this presentation is Getting Your Next Million. Well, it's hard to get to the next million if we're focusing on just the stuff that got us to the first million. So, what's that mean? That's usually tactical stuff like what's the best headline, or should I do a webinar or a launch, or maybe I should do both, which is really the kiss of death, right? You ever try to do two things at once and neither one gets done properly? Ask me how I know. I've done that a few times, right? Or it's what color the buy button should be. Or maybe you're trying to figure out how to use those god-awful automation tools that were probably invented by ISIS, right? Or you're trying to focus on what type of promotion you should do next. You know, maybe you had a great month last month and now the month is new and you have to do everything all over again. What am I going to do this month? What kind of promotion am I going to run this month? That's first million focus. Or how do I create these new products? And it goes on and on. Again, that's first million focus. Here's the deal. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to focus on that. However, I want you to think about this one quote. My coach, Dan Sullivan, one of my many coaches, taught me this. He says, the skills that got you out of Egypt aren't the same skills that will get you to the promised land. And Dan said the redneck translation of this is, the stuff that got you here ain't going to get you where you want to go. And I was like, that's really pretty profound, right? And it's very, very true. The stuff that got you here ain't going to get you where you want to go. So to get where you want to go, we have to develop new skills and we've got to develop new habits. So I want to share those with you right now because they're actually very simple. Here's how to get the 8 figures and more. And this is brought to you by my delightful tale of woe. Yay, a tale of woe. It'll be brief. I'll be real quick with it. As a matter of fact, here's a spoiler alert. It's always just one thing. What gets you to 8 figures and beyond to the next level, wherever you might be, it's always just one big breakthrough. It's never doing 9 billion things. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And I'll illustrate it with my tale of woe. I'll be brief. So this is what an entrepreneur's life looks like. And by the way, this is a graph that's pretty typical of all entrepreneurial experience, especially if you don't embrace what I'm about to share with you. I had my first real success in the early 1990s. I built a company from scratch to 5 offices with 300 employees doing $60 million a year in telephone sales, raising money for these things called wireless cable TV licenses. To make a long story short, we ultimately had to shut down this money machine we'd built because we ran out of things to feed it. We ran out of markets. Definitely a damn it moment for me. More recently, in 2019, we were putting on mastermind events at huge mansions in beautiful places like Scottsdale and San Diego and places like that. And people were coming in from all over the world and they would stay with us in the mansion. They could either stay at a hotel, obviously, or they could stay with us and pay for a room in there, which kind of paid for the entire weekend. We had private chefs there, mastermind, worked on everybody's business, worked on ourselves. Just absolutely amazing, empowering events. And guess what happened? We did 6 of them in 2019. We had 6 of them booked for 2020. And we had this thing called the pandemic hit. We had to not only not do the events in 2020, but we had to refund money for 6 events that we'd already collected. Right back to damn it, just with more money and nicer clothes. So I kept trying different things and I'm stressed all the time and I'm always in a state of reaction. And by the middle of 2020, I was like, this totally sucks. I was always stressed out and I just couldn't grow to the level I wanted to grow, no matter what the business model was. So I decided to sit back and look at all the things that I'd done in the past and where I found it was so unexpected. It made me think back to when I decided to work with dentists to help them with their marketing. And I had an inner circle where I'd send them a couple of training CDs and a newsletter every month, and they'd pay me $397 a month. The CDs were literally recorded phone calls of me doing something that I love to do. And I had a staff that took care of all the minutia, all the direct mail, the newsletter, and all that. By the end of the second year, I had over 200 dentists paying me $397 a month. Now, I ultimately sold that business, but that little promo over time made me over $2 million. And it was super easy to fulfill, and it was super easy to sell. It brought in over $2 million. My brain was like, dude, what if all this time that was all you'd been doing? And it sort of hit me. And I was like, man, that was really easy to sell and it was fun to do and the clients were happy. So I made like an instant decision to focus on that one thing for me. So I set off to create AI virtual assistants as a tool to help entrepreneurs sell more stuff online. And it took less than 6 months to create over $100,000 in recurring revenue, which is amazing, just from focusing on that one thing. I'll tell you another example of how focusing on just one thing can really change things for you. I also work with private clients, and this is one of my private clients, Brooke, and she's a life coach. And when we started working together, she was making about $300,000 a year. And she comes to me and says, I want to make $1 million a year. And I said, okay, well, what's holding you back? And she says, well, first, let me tell you about all the things that I want to do to get there. And she gave me like 9 million ideas, like anybody would. She was like, I could make a course, or I could make this product, or I could segment into this different market. And I was like, okay, you could, but what's the number one thing that's standing in your way right now? And she said, well, the problem is I can't handle any more clients. If I take on any more clients, the way things are right now, I'll be physically burned out. So I figured, okay, well, you got 9 million ideas, but you've got a process that's working. What do you think would happen if you just doubled the price? And, naturally, I got a little bit of resistance, but, who wouldn't, right? Anyways, she was like, I don't know. What do you think would happen? I said, I don't know, but why don't we just give it a try? So she did. And when I see her again, she says, you're not going to believe this, but it worked. Now my income is higher, but I still need to get to $1 million. I said, okay, well, what's the number one thing that's standing in your way now? And she said, I just can't take on any more clients without being more stressed out and overwhelmed. And I said, well, then why don't we do it again? Why don't we just try raising the price again? And, she said, okay. By the end of that year, she went from $300,000 to $1 million, a 330% increase in revenue from just that one thing, just from that one area of focus, from just doing one thing. Remember, when she came in, she had 9 million ideas. She was like, I can create this program and this one, and instead said, wait a minute. I think there might be a group of people in your marketplace that would like an even better and more personalized service, and that would be willing to pay for it. So we focused on just that one thing, and it helped her grow 330%. Here's another example of that. This is my friend and client. His name is Carl White. He's awesome. I first met him, I think, in 2012. And the reason I call this slide Helping the Cool Get Cooler is because he's just kind of like one of the coolest people I've ever met. So really, really cool guy. Anyway, so Carl comes to me in 2012, and he was doing great. He was a classic serial entrepreneur. He had so many businesses. I can't tell you how many, but it was a ton of businesses. I'll give you a visual representation in a minute. And as I was going, he says, I'm making a lot of money, but he was just super burned out, and he was super stressed all the time. And he'd made some real estate investments quite aggressively. And then, like so many people, the real estate crash really messed him up. So now he's got to come up with a whole bunch of cash and, his cash flow to cover all the real estate investments. And he was doing it, but it was freaking him out. He was working all the time. So I had this whiteboard in my office. So Carl comes to the office, and this whiteboard was huge. It took up an entire wall. And this is not Carl and I in front of it. This is what I got when I did a Google image search for giant whiteboard with stuff on it. And anyway, what we drew out looked like this, okay? So Carl had so many projects going on, and they were all working pretty well. So it takes us like an hour and a half to sort of draw everything out and kind of get an idea of really what's going on. And there was one little thing that he was doing that really intrigued me. And there was this deal. He was providing advice to mortgage loan originators, which is a fancy way of saying loan officers, right? So these were independent loan originators, and he had them as clients. He was really good at helping these people. He would help them attract more leads and convert more leads into customers and help them manage their money and just really kind of get their whole life together. And the results he was getting for them was just amazing. He was actually helping them see a significant increase in their revenue within 90 days, at least for the average person that works for him. I'm like, dude, tell me about this. And he's like, all right, man. He goes, this is a great project. I really like this. The business is great. These folks are really friendly and easy to get along with, and they're really easy to get as customers. It's really simple work for me to do. It's like second nature to me because I'd hang out with these guys anyways, And as he's telling me about this, I realize that it's very profitable. It's no stress. It's easy to sell. It's not complex. And I said, all right, look, let's quit doing all this other stuff and let's just focus on this one thing. Let's just focus on this one business and put all that energy that you're putting into all those spinning plates. Let's put it all into this thing. And that's exactly what he does, or what he did rather. And this is a text I got from him on January 26th in the afternoon. We text all the time about margins and numbers and stuff like that. And I didn't get a chance to ask him before I did this if I could share his exact numbers, so I blacked him out. But you can see, there's multiple 7 figures here. And what's cool is he went from struggling and being stressed out to working 8 days per month. That's not a typo. 8 days per month, and he's making multiple seven figures, and his profit margin is 7%, 75%, which is wonderful, right? So you might be thinking, okay, well, these stories are great, but how can this type of thing be replicated? You know, at first I thought this was just a bunch of happy coincidences, but then I realized that, what we all did, Brooke, Carl, and I, we actually accidentally had discovered and utilized something called our best payday. And that's what I want to help you find right now, because when you find your best payday and focus on your best payday, your business can shift dramatically. So what is best payday? Well, here we go. So your best payday is a deliverable. It's typically your final deliverable. This is simply the thing that you're doing for money, right? So whatever your customers are actually paying you to do, that's the deliverable. So your best payday is a deliverable that meets the following criteria. Number one, it has to be high profit. If it's low profit, what's the point, right? And here's an interesting distinction. I'm using the word best here, not biggest, because it also has to be energizing to you, all right? So if you're left with less energy at the end of the day than you had at the beginning when you started the day, if you're doing this particular type of payday, then that's not your best payday. The reason I put this out there is because my best payday is not my biggest payday. My biggest paydays are creating campaigns from scratch for a client. These I can charge $100,000 or more, and it's great. It's a huge payday, but I can't do it every day, and it's really, really draining and very, very difficult to do, right? So biggest and best are two different things. I think you get it, okay? So it has to be high net profit. It energizes you, right? You like doing it, something you love to do. Here's the thing, and it needs to be easy to sell, right? If your business has got something that's difficult to sell, you're probably not selling the right thing, right? It also needs to be easy to deliver. This means that if you do it, it can't be so complex and so hard that you're exhausted by the time you're done doing it. So it needs to be something that's easy. And it also needs to be sustainable, because if it's not easy to deliver, it will not be sustainable. So your best payday is something that meets all this criteria. So look at everything in your business and compare everything you're doing and use this as kind of a scorecard, sort of. Then you'll see what your best payday is. So for me, at the time of creating this, it was the inner circle. For Brooke, hers was continuing to do coaching, but just raising the prices. For Carl, his best payday was working with these loan officers. Now here's the deal. This is where it gets really cool. Some folks might be doing a lot and don't want to be limited. There are a lot of things I like to do. Well, here's the thing. You can have more than one. Here's how I discovered this. In 2017, I decided to start doing mastermind events a couple times a year. I was going to do them at these big, beautiful mansions with a private chef, and the bedrooms in the mansion were available on a first-come, first-served basis, obviously at a price. And in the first 21 days after sending the first email, it brought in $625,000 in sales from sending a simple email with a PDF. So you can have multiple best paydays. All you need to do is be looking for a deliverable that meets these criteria. High net profit, it's energizing, it's easy to sell, it's easy to deliver, and you can do it over and over again. Here's another example. Remember Brooke? She came to one of our masterminds, and I said, okay, Brooke, what do you want to do? And she said, I really want to grow, but I want to also start taking myself out of the daily operations of the business. And she said, I don't really want to mess around with price elasticity anymore. I want to build another arm onto the business. And I want to model it after the program you created for dentists, which was to create continuity. So I said, okay. And we built her little process, and she started selling her continuity. And she really began focusing on that for a solid year and a half. And I heard from her over New Year's Eve. I actually hear from her all the time. And she did $5 million last year. Now, take a look at this. Remember earlier when I told you how you could 10x your business? And actually that if you wanted to split hairs, I'd show you how you could 16.66x your business? Well, that's exactly what Brooke did. She started out at $300,000 a year, and then she did $5 million last year, which is a 16.66x growth. So that's what she did. She found the one big thing. At first, it was the price elasticity, right? And then she realized she could charge significantly more and give a higher level of personal service to her clients. Then she created another aspect of her business and then just did that one thing. In her case, it was a monthly program, and she just focused on that one thing, right? So how do you actually do this? What does this mean? Well, I'll share it with you because after having done it with so many people, I found out that there's really a process for it, and that's what I want to share with you. So you follow the 3 magic steps that aren't really magic at all. It's really just common sense, but everybody seems to get them backwards. So I'm going to walk you through these. Step number 1 is to stabilize. Step number 2 is to optimize. And step number 3 is to expand. Note that expand is in red. That does not mean it's the most important, because it's the most dangerous. This is the part that can mess you up. See, you don't want to be this guy here. But this is what most of my clients are like. Now, I say this affectionately, by the way, but this is what most people are like when they come to work with me as a client. They're like, dude, everything is working. I got 9 million ideas. I want to go into this market. I want to create this product. I want to expand into this vertical. I want to start running these types of ads. I want to do this and this and this. What they're really doing is they're trying to go straight from something that worked to where their brain is telling them they're this super genius with a J, and they're trying to expand to do 9 million things. And that's the last step. That's what you want to do last, not first, right? So let me show you the order in which you should do this. What we first want to start with is stabilize. And what that means is we want to make sure that you have a good core process. I know that's not a very sexy term, is it? But I'll tell you what is sexy. Cashing those checks. Here's what a core process means. A core process is simply a sales process that meets these criteria. Criteria number 1 is it's simple. If your sales process has 9 million moving parts and it's very complex and you can't explain it to anybody without a flow chart or a manual or something like that, then it's not simple. It's broken. So number 1, it needs to be simple. Number 2, it needs to be low resistance. So if you got a hard time getting people to participate in your sales process, you're in trouble. A great example of this is timeshare, right? Timeshare is a sales process that is not low resistance. Timeshare sales, have you ever sat through a timeshare pitch? That's really, really high resistance, right? I mean, you've got to get somebody something like a ride on the space shuttle these days to get them to sit through an entire timeshare presentation. That's because it's high resistance. So you need a sales process where you don't have to twist somebody's arm just to get them to see your pitch. That's what I'm talking about. So it needs to be low resistance. It also needs to build goodwill. What this means is that everyone that goes through your sales process, whether they buy or not, they need to like you more after they went through the process than they did before they went through it. And the reason why is because you'll find out, if you haven't found this out already, is that your income and your success is directly related to how much goodwill you have in your marketplace. The more goodwill you have, the more successful you will be. So it makes sense that your sales process should be simple, it should be easy to get people into, and it should build goodwill. It should also be something that is easily sustained, meaning you can continue to keep on doing it. So if you're doing it personally, you need to be able to keep doing it all the time. It can be replicated, which means you can get someone else to do it, right? Or it can be automated, which means obviously that can happen through automation and you don't have to be there to do it. So it can be any of these 3 things. It doesn't have to be all 3, but it's got to be something that can either be sustained, replicated, or automated. So if you got that, that's what a core process is. Here, I'll draw out mine. When I created my inner circle, that was my continuity program, I had the one funnel that was working already, where people would buy my book about how to get dental patients, and then the webinar would sell them a higher ticket course. It wasn't a particularly expensive course. They could buy this training for like $1,800. And when they bought the book, there were a couple of one-click upsells so they could buy some more stuff upon purchase of the book. That was really my core process. And when I decided to create my inner circle, all I did was think, you know what? I've got this book that's attracting the type of people that I want. At that time, it was dentists. And, they want to get more patients. And I'm selling these books at a profit. So why don't I just bolt on the inner circle offer to the back of it? So now anybody who buys the book at a profit is going to see my inner circle offer. Guess what? That was my entire core process for my inner circle, to get more inner circle members. And the reason why is it gave me a predictable result. And that's all you really want. You want a sales process that gives you a predictable result. You need to know that if you put $1 in on marketing, that core process is going to give you $1.10 or $1.50 or whatever, right? And that's it. That's the first step. That's the single most important thing that you can build. Because once you have that, things can kind of run on their own, right? But if you want to grow, we go to step number 2, which is to optimize. This is a fancy way of saying we just make your core process even better. So I'll give you an example, and this is kind of embarrassing. Remember my core process for getting clients for my inner circle? It starts with my book funnel, or someone sees an ad and they go buy my book. After they buy the book, they can get on a webinar. It's automated. Some of these folks will buy the one-click upsells during the checkout process, and some of them will buy the course. And some of them will see my promotion for my inner circle, and some of them will join. Well, I wanted to make my core process even better. Now, a lot of you guys that are more advanced are going to laugh at me, but after running my core process for over a year, I decided to add an order bump to my order form on my book. Now, I know this is so simple, but didn't even occur to me till after about a year after I started running my book funnel. So I put my order bump on my order form, and the next thing you know, my average book buyer was worth a lot more money, meaning I can now spend more money to get more book buyers at a profit, which means I can now present my inner circle to more people. This is how I grew the entire inner circle, by simply focusing on the core process. This is how we grew it and how we did over $2 million. This is it. This is the big secret. But it's really, really simple, actually. The final step is to expand. And here's the way you do it. Expansion number one is to bolt something on. So if you go back to my core process with my book, it was book to webinar. That was my whole core process. That made money, right? When I wanted to expand my business and go from products to continuity, I didn't go out and create an entirely different sales process for my inner circle. I just bolted the inner circle to the end of my core process. I didn't have to run ads for the inner circle or anything like that. It was just like, hey, if they buy my book, I'll start selling them inner circle. That was the way I grew my inner circle. It's called a bolt-on. The second way to expand is called cloning. This is what Brooke did. So when Brooke started her monthly program, of course, this was in addition to the already successful coaching program she had. When she started that, she came to me and she said, okay, what's working really well for you? And I'll just model that. And I said, okay, I got this book funnel and it's working pretty well. And she said, okay, I'm going to create a book funnel. And that's what she did. And it worked really, really well. And at the time she wanted to expand, she says, you know what? The book funnel worked really, really well. So I'm just going to create another book funnel to the same marketplace, right? So all her books are about coaching yourself on how to be a coach and how to solve your own emotional issues. So she just wrote multiple books on multiple topics and they all funnel to her monthly program. That's called cloning, right? Replacing yourself is another way to expand. So you remember my friend Carl, right? I told you when we first started, he was all stressed out. He was overwhelmed, and now he makes ridiculous amounts of net profit, and he only works 8 days a month. Well, when we started, he was overwhelmed because he had so many different businesses. Then we focused on the business of serving mortgage loan originators, and it was him doing all the fulfillment. And then we got the business stabilized, and everything was cool, and when it came time to expand, he started having other people do the coaching. At the beginning, it was him doing all the coaching, right? And then he just trained other people to do the coaching. He replaced himself in that business, right? There are really only 3 sustainable areas of expansion that you should be working on, right? That's it. That's how we keep it simple. And that's how you grow, right? That's how we get out of overwhelm and we get to start growing our business without stress. So if we want to look at this in terms of a 3-part thing to do, thing number 1 is you always want to use next million thinking to find the one big thing. Don't use first million thinking. Don't be thinking, what kind of headline should I use? What order button should I use? Or what new product should I create? You stay stuck doing that. That's first million thinking. Instead, focused on next million thinking and find that one big thing. For me, it was shifting from selling a million different things to selling just one thing, which was continuity. That was my first big breakthrough. For Brooke, hers was price elasticity. That was the first one big thing that she focused on. For Carl was focused on the area of the business that he really maximized was working with the loan originators instead of working with 9 million different other projects. Focus just on one aspect of the business. And once you do that, then you do the 3 magic steps, right? Stabilize, optimize, and expand. You build a stable core process to sell your best payday. Remember we talked about finding the best payday in the core process to get customers for it. Then you optimize the core process. And then if you want to get fancy, you can expand. Some people will never even get to the expansion. They're like, okay, I'm good. I don't need to do anything anymore, Just like Carl, he's like, you know what? I'm pretty happy. Things are working great. I'm kind of happy with 8 days a month. I'm cool, right? So after that, the next thing is repeat the process. If you want to keep growing, then you just repeat. That's what I did in my business. Number 1, I found my best payday was my inner circle continuity program. And then I focused my AI virtual assistants for the last 12 months. And then I realized that my 8-week accelerator was also a best payday. So I created a core process for that and I stabilized it and I optimized it. And the same thing with Brooke. At first, her big thing was price elasticity. and, doing the actual coaching for more affluent clientele and raising the price. She stabilized that, she optimized it, and then she expanded it. And then she repeated the process, by the way, and bolted on the continuity to the end of her process. And so she stabilized it, she optimized it, and then she cloned her core process for that. And then she repeated it. So that's it. There's really only 3 things that you want to do. So if this concept to you makes sense and you can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel here and you're excited by some of the things I've shared with you, then I would like to, with your permission, tell you about my 8-week accelerator program, because I've mentioned it a few times and you might be interested. So my 8-week accelerator is a program where I work with you privately, one-on-one, for 8 weeks. And this is limited to businesses who are doing high 6- and 7-figure businesses. This is not for beginners. It's not appropriate for beginners. And, this is definitely not a get started program or anything like that. And here's what we do together. We work on finding your one big thing. We work on finding it and then stabilize, optimize, and expand. And then we repeat. And we do that by working together once a week for 8 weeks. And during each meeting, our entire area of focus is on one thing, which is what you want. So we clearly identify what you want. We clearly find a pathway for you to get there, and we clearly find a way for you to implement that plan. That's what we do at each meeting. And if you need any help with implementation, you can just call my cell because you're one of my private clients. Of course, you can email me, call me, whatever you want to do. All right? So if this sounds like something that is appealing to you, and you're like, man, I would just love to work with Stephen and find my one big thing and really get this thing done and then start repeating that process, then this 8-week accelerator program is specifically for you. So if that sounds good, you're going to want to click the link on this page. You'll see it somewhere over here, and apply to talk to me. And I'd love to talk to you. So I hope you enjoyed this training. I hope you found this useful. And most importantly, I hope I've sold you on this concept of really looking for your best payday and finding that best payday, and then just building a simple core process to support it. And if you want help doing that, I would be delighted to help you. So if that sounds good to you and you meet the criteria, where you actually have a business and you're doing 6 to 7 figures, then go ahead and apply now, and you and I can talk personally, and we'll see if we're a good match. Okay? Thanks so much for watching this training. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. All right? Take it easy. Thank you. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that training. I put together a 12-page workbook and worksheet for your best payday. And you can have that by DMing, is that a word? DM the word payday. And you will not only see the AI sales bot in action, but we will also send you that 12-page report so you can go through and figure out your best payday. And you actually go through the worksheet there and the workbook and walk you right through the whole thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this live training. I will be back probably here in the next few days. We're going to start doing this a lot more often and be there to help you guys scale your business without stress and overwhelm. All right. Thanks for your time and have a good one. Till we meet again.